I want to welcome in the good doctor here this morning, Dr. John Braccio with Regional Psychological Services in East Lansing, drjohnb.com for all the podcasts, because he started a week ago a series here on divorce. And, yeah, no one wants to look divorce right in the face, but for a lot of Americans, it's a real deal, of course. So we talked about it in the macro. Now we're going to drill down a little bit. When it's inevitable, how can we learn from the situation? Because we're all trying to learn. Dr. Braccio, good morning. Welcome back.
Well, good morning to you, Dave. And it really is critical to learn from a divorce, because if you don't, you run the risk of being angry, even having rage, entering into bad relationships, even getting into substance abuse, all kinds of issues. So it's really critical that you try to figure out what really happened. And that requires that you objectively analyze what parts you had in the divorce. Because rarely is there a spouse who is fully responsible for a divorce and the other one is not. There are cases, but most cases we're talking about just breakdowns in communication, among many other things.
The old phrase, it takes two to tango, right? It takes two to tango. Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Then I think you need to understand why it occurred. Okay, this again can help diffuse anger, guilt, disillusionment. Then you have to be brave and not fearful. You need to really find out about yourself as you look at the next phase of your life. You need to understand yourself. You have to understand that errors that occur, you don't want them to occur again. So this comes from really understanding yourself. You don't want to enter a new relationship until you really understand why did the divorce take place. And this is really a lot of soul searching, and it really takes some time. It's not something you just sit down a few days and do. And then but friendship, dating, taking part in social activities are important too for mental balance and sanity. So you can't just go into a shell and disappear. And you need to really accept that being without a partner, you need to be to the point that you're comfortable alone. It could be with your children. But you need to accept that you don't need a partner in order to run the risk of just making problems. If you just say, I have to have someone, I have to have someone. You need to learn to co-parent, and this is really very difficult. We'll be talking about this more as a specific topic in the future. But co-parenting with someone you're very angry at, or a good chance you're very angry at, you can't let that anger lead to never ending and destroying everybody in its wake. Then you have to, once the divorce is there, you really have to let it go. You can't just keep in the courts and keep long after fighting it with the children and anybody who knows you. You really have to move on, and that is very hard when you have that mix of sexuality, of commitment, of children, of family, of friends. And then after that, you also have to be able to maintain marital friendships. You have to remember that you were a couple, but the friendships often were yours as well as the ex-spouse. And then for a last point, you need to be, as needed, seek some combination of counseling, spiritual growth, family support, and friendship support to help overcome the pain of the divorce as you feel necessary. So these are really all important things for you to learn about yourself as you move forward as a single person, and you don't let the guilt, the anger, the frustration, even the rage from the divorce destroy you and often those around you.
You talked about the co-parenting, and again, I grew up in an era where divorce wasn't as common. And when it happened, the way divorces were handled were different than they are handled today. And I did know some, peers who were really messed up because of this, because everything was about proving some kind of mental cruelty, or there was cruelty to the children. There were certain benchmarks that made for a very acrimonious situation. You have to literally these days try to avoid as much of that as possible, or it can fester, can it?
It really can, Dave, because also a lot of divorces occur because people are different, quite different, and they can be very different in their parenting. And you can have different styles of parenting that are both effective. They're just different, okay? And one may be a little better than the other, even better. But if the other parent meets a reasonable standard, then they're an acceptable parent. So when you have divorce and people co-parent, they often carry on the divorce, and that'll be another topic we'll talk about specifically. But it's really critical there be co-parenting, because we know the data on divorced children is really pretty devastating. It's pretty bad what happens to them. Now, we don't want people to stay together that don't get along. I mean, it's really devastatingly bad, if you will. On the other hand, regardless, children often are the ones that suffer the most. So it's really critical that parents, even when things are over, that they find a method to be able to co-parent for the sake of the mental health, educational level, and just their peer relationships, because children lose something after a divorce. A lot of people don't want to admit that, but it's really true. When you have two parents, when you're working as a strong nuclear family, it is a positive thing from an economic, from an educational point of view. This is just where the data is. Now, you can always find exceptions. There's a lot of exceptions, but as a whole, there's no doubt that a full family together that has children together, that raises children together, that is a positive for those children, particularly if they've had that experience. So when you take it away, it is very critical that the parents are able to co-parent. And I might add, it's an area where divorced parents so often fail because of the anger, because of the frustration, and because they don't want to see there are other methods of parenting, and that the key is to find some common ground that they can work on together. But very, very difficult, Dave. These are difficult things in a divorce.
Doc, you also said you said something about not entering a new relationship until you understand fully yourself why your divorce happened. Unless the divorce was caused by, an attachment to an outside party, let's say, the idea of a relationship on the rebound when divorce is involved, has it been your, experience that usually is not a healthy situation?
Well, often you can just take statistics. When you look at second marriages have a much higher rate of divorce than first marriages. First marriages can be like up to 50%. But in second marriages, you're looking 60, 65, even a 70%. So I think that if you really have to know why did you have the divorce? What type of person were you seeking? How did you interact in the relationship? You really need to understand yourself and find out what went wrong. So when you do eventually enter into another relationship, and this is the pattern that people follow, that they really know who they are and they know the kind of person that they really need to be with. And then to further complicate things, when you have two family, you get these blended families. That can be many, many issues too, but that's kind of a separate topic also. But the key thing is, who are you? Find out. You can do spiritual growth. You can work with counselors, therapists. You can work with clergy. You can work with family members. You can seek out friends. But you really do need to really understand, why did this happen? What part did I have in it? What can I do to make sure I don't do that again? And have even a checklist, a good checklist of things that are going to make the relationship succeed. What strengths do you bring to the relationship? What type of person do you want with you? And this is really a hard thing, and a lot of times people can find even someone they get along with fine, but if they don't get along with children or family members or their friends, it can lead to conflict. So it's really a big thing. Who am I? Where am I on this planet? Where am I going? And what do I really need to move forward effectively? Because you don't want to bring somebody in that the whole thing is going to blow up too. You really need, but this takes a year, it could be more, it could be a little less. But it does.
You're saying divorce, the bottom line from learning from divorce, though, I'm taking here, is this is more than just getting the legal side sorted out. The legal side will sort itself out. Getting this self-awareness and kind of looking inward before you're looking outward is hugely important, is what you're saying.
It's critical, Dave. It is critical, and I've worked with so many people, and then second marriages, couples, even third, fourth marriages, where people never do that inward look. They never really understand because they become very defensive, and their anger from the past doesn't really allow them to really understand what part did they have in the problems in the marriage. It's a hard thing to do, Dave. It's a very difficult, when you look at the mix that is involved in a marriage when you say until death do us part, and you really believe that and you're committed to that, and then things just fall apart, which up to 50% of marriages do, you can see why it's difficult. But those that really can understand themselves, move forward, figure out what they did wrong, they don't have to take all the blame. It's not a question of guilt. It's just trying to figure out what happened.
Face things honestly. Yeah, just face them honestly. And not lie to yourself. Yeah, exactly. No, it sometimes that's the hardest thing, but the most critical thing to do. What to learn from your divorce. The divorce is inevitable. It's going to happen. It is happening. It has happened. Now what? And that's what we discussed here today. The podcast will reside shortly, along with all the others, at Dr. John B. That's B as in boy.com. Regional Psychological Services in East Lansing. Our good friend, Dr. John Braccio. Always good to talk to you. Till next time, the series continues.
Very good, Dave. Nice chatting with you all.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're back. Don't go away. 1320 WILS.